Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Matt Halloran. You know, behavioral finance seems to be something that a lot of people talk about, but I've actually really seen it a lot more in theory than I've seen it in practice. And our guest today, Brian Portnoy, is somebody who I got to see about 2 months ago speak at the Excel conference, the Carson Wealth Conference. And I got to see him on stage talking about applied behavioral finance. And after I saw that, I was like, oh my God, dude, you got to come on the show, because there's so many things that you talked about in that presentation, Brian, that are so applicable to the world of marketing, client service, client communication, client retention, and really understanding and getting to the crux of what your clients want. So welcome to the show, man.
Hey, good to see you. Great to be here.
Yeah. All right. Here's the thing. Applied, right? I want to start there. Let's define the difference between what you're bringing to the marketplace and maybe what other people are reading in books and seeing it from other presenters.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways we could start. Let's just start through the lens of the financial advisor and be a little bit empathetic to their plight. So in the world of financial planning, everything's now comprehensive. It's holistic.
Yeah.
And those are fancy words that signal virtue. You're doing more good for more people. It also means that you are ridiculously busy and that your hair is on fire. So behavioral finance, as we think about that, and that's maybe a fancy term for the psychology of money. It's been a fascinating topic for decades. It was invented by Kahneman and Tversky in the 70s and 80s. And fast forward to now, who's not interested in the human condition, but specifically who's not interested in themselves? We're all egomaniacs. And so advisors are like, yeah, behavioral finance, really interesting topic. How do I use it in my practice? I'm very, very busy. And so, the idea, I wrote a book a number of years ago called The Geometry of Wealth, which sort of was a larger meditation on where money fits into a meaningful life. And there were some concepts in there that clearly landed in the advice community and landed with the end client, our friends, our neighbors, our partners. And so, the name of the game is, how do you take those core ideas, some of which are conceptual, some of which are theoretical, and package them in a way where they are bite-sized skills or ideas that you can immediately download and use in your day-to-day. So that's the applied piece, and advisors like it. You kind of meet them where they are and give them something useful.
So it's easy for them to implement and it's easy for them to understand, but I want to know why. It's maybe just a stupid question, but why is this so important, and how does this change the advisor's practice?
Because there's been a pretty significant evolution in the industry. So the first CFP was issued in 1972, 1973. It's only been 50 years. This is a relatively new profession, and it's evolved significantly. This was a brokerage business selling investment products. That still happens, but it's not where your edge is. And your edge is actually no longer in the investment side of things, picking better stocks or better funds. The edge, or maybe even we can talk about it as the moat that you want to keep wide in order to preserve and then scale your business, is on relationships. How do you more deeply engage in your conversations with other people so you understand where they're coming from and you could help them along the way? Oh, and by the way, that's just not an outward facing perspective in terms of engaging the client, where you are earning revenue. It's also an inward looking perspective in terms of, who am I hiring? How am I training and motivating them across their career? So behavioral finance is a shorthand for human facing skills that we all need. And there's a lot of them, and they're very distinct from the elements of the technical expertise in investments, assurance, estate planning, taxes, and so forth.
When everybody was freaking out about robo-advisors, and you and I have been in the industry remembering when that happened, that didn't seem that long ago. By the way, I just want to take a step back. It makes me so happy that you said something that was started in 1972 is still new. It's just personally, because that's when I was born, and it makes me feel young again. And I owe you a big one for that one. So anyways, I appreciate that.
I got you.
The idea here, though, is that some of the things that advisors have been hanging their hats on, especially a lot of the things that they communicate to their existing clients and prospects about, are things that they have no control over and are really table stakes. what are some of the things? So let's choose maybe three, because I know you have so many different opportunities here. Let's choose maybe three things that our audience could just do. They get done listening to this podcast, they've got a client meeting, and they can go ahead and implement. And I'd like, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
two that are advisor centric, but I love that other thing. Actually, I hadn't heard you say that previously, that some of the things that you teach also help with management training, motivation, stuff like that. So if we can save the third one, that's a practice focused one, that'd be great. So where would we begin with advisor focused behavioral finance techniques that they can take to their next client meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, boy, my mind's going in a few different directions. So, a lot of what we're talking about here is, I'm gonna give you one straightforward one and one curveball, and then we'll go
All right.
to. So the straightforward one is about expectations and the importance of expectations in our lives. I'll skip the neuroscience lecture, but the brain, in its essence, is a predictive vehicle. Modern neuroscience is really consumed with this powerful idea that really all the brain does, all humans do, is anticipate the next millisecond, second, hour, day, year, and decade. There's an equation, the happiness equation, that we work with our clients on, our clients being financial advisors. Happiness equals reality minus expectations. And so, where does an expectation come from? Well, part of it is just subconscious, and part of it is something that you set and manage very explicitly. And the equation works in a pretty straightforward way. When the world ends up being a little bit better than you expected, you're happy, at least for a moment. And when reality is less than you wanted it to be or thought it would be, you are you are sad, if only for a moment. So the idea here, happiness equals reality minus expectations, take that equation into any client conversation and try to be very explicit about the types of expectations that you are setting. Because it's one thing for a client to say, well, I want to turn $1 million into $2 million, or that, sort of standard math. It's another where they are going to be very satisfied with the service and the experience that you deliver, so much so that you get those so-called referral worthy moments. And so it's not about sandbagging. It's not about setting expectations so low that you beat them. That actually is not a great long-term solution. But when happiness equals reality minus expectations, what are the elements of your practice that you have control over, that which is not the market, it's not the weather, it's not the economy, it's not the inflation rate, it's not any of those things. It's different elements of the plan, different decisions a client can make in terms of savings behavior or spending or asset allocation or things like that, things that the advisor has control over as well. So tip number one, happiness equals reality minus expectations. Lean into the way the brain is wired and set and manage expectations much more explicitly than you have in the past. The second thing, and this is the curveball one, is that we want to be more empathetic. I don't think that's particularly controversial. So that doesn't necessarily mean walking in somebody else's shoes, but it does mean being able to take on the perspective of others and understand what it is they're feeling. And also, to a large extent, trusting them when they tell us something about who they are and what they want. So that's empathy. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. The fuel in the tank for empathy is self-awareness. And
Oh,
so there's 4 dimensions to emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills. When you want to connect better with others, we'll go back to Aristotle and just say, know thyself. Actually, that was Socrates. Um, get my Greeks mixed up sometimes. So what can you do in terms of your own money story, your own personality, the elements of your identity and who you are? And this isn't the forum to walk through detailed exercises, but there's
mhm.
different ways to get to know where you are coming from. And as you build up that self-awareness, and as you build out a new kind of emotional vocabulary to understand where you're coming from, I guarantee it that you're going to listen a little bit differently to the client, and you're going to hear them better, And most importantly, they are going to feel heard in a way that they haven't before. So if what we're trying to do here is deepen engagement, it actually starts with you, not with them.
Let's take the last one though, which is the social skills in order to execute this in a social situation. You and I go to conferences all the time, and there are a lot of advisors who think they have these amazing social skills, but they're actually just planned selling skills that have been functional for them in the past. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating when you took me behind the scenes of what you guys are offering is the exercises and the scripting and the way that you help people practice. Can we just back both of those up and take the first one and the second one and
Mhm.
deconstruct that just a little bit on how can an advisor learn how to do that more and better? Because I remember when you and I were sitting down, one of the things that we both agreed on is this takes practice, right? I was actually talking about listening, and you were talking about, what you had just presented on. It is practice. How do you help implement practice? Because that's a huge component of behavioral psychology, which I had studied substantially in graduate school as a therapist, because I know that if I can get somebody to do something over and over again, the probability of them doing it better as they do it over and over again increases exponentially. What do you think?
I think that most people think they have a growth mindset, but they don't, because growth is uncomfortable and
Yeah,
no
it
one
is.
wants to be uncomfortable. You need to
Yeah.
break muscle to build muscle.
Mhm.
So I'm really glad you used the word practice, because substantive expertise of behavioral finance is, maybe necessary, but not even close to being sufficient to really upskilling to becoming a behavioral advisor or human first advisor. Instead, so where behavioral finance has been and why it's been actually just a dead end for decades is that we memorize a list of biases, endowment effect, loss aversion, availability, recency bias, all these kind of things. And so you walk around with basically the ability to win at Trivial Pursuit, but not the ability to have a better conversation. Where does the better conversation come from? It comes from learning design. And so one thing I'm really proud of about Shaping Wealth is that, yeah, we're very knowledgeable about behavioral finance, neuroscience, emotional intelligence, positive psychology, a number of different disciplines that do sort of translate into learnable skills. But then the other piece, the other circle that creates the Venn diagram here, is expertise in learning design and learning
Mhm.
experiences. And as you just alluded to, there's better or worse ways of doing that. The worse, the less good way, I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not as good, is to just tell someone something and have them memorize it and say, go forth. And I hope that's useful. The better way to do it is to thin slice knowledge so
Mhm.
that you can learn it bit by bit. You give someone an idea, let them learn the idea, and then play around with the idea. Hey, happiness equals reality minus expectations. That's a super low. It sounds simple. It's super loaded. All three of
Yeah.
those words are like heavy duty.
Mhm.
And so, all right, you learned what it was. Now we're going to play around with the different pieces to it. Now, step three, you're going to go out into the world and you're going to practice. You're going to think, okay, I've got 9 client calls this week. Let's see if
Mm.
there's 4 of them that I can kind of, if not explicitly use that model,
Mhm.
I can have it in the back of my mind as I think about what it is that we're going to talk about. And then, take your wins and losses seriously. Was that helpful? How was that useful? And then the step after that, step 4, is share it with others. We really don't know something until we can teach something. So this is experiential learning design, capital E, capital L, capital D. It's the way that adults learn. It's the way that busy adults learn. And to the full circle, growth mindset, this requires us to be uncomfortable. It requires us to be a little bit confused at times. It requires us to maybe have a conversation on something where it doesn't go as well as we would hope. But until you cobble together a stack of experiences with each of the different skills that you might learn, you're not going to get better. You could think of that in any growth context. If you go to the gym and you work, bicep curls just once, you're going to break a little bit of muscle and maybe it grows back slightly bigger. but then you don't do it again,
Mhm.
what's the point? The thing about these human facing skills, whether it be decision making or emotional intelligence or habit formation or well being protocols, is that they need to be learned and practiced over time in different contexts. And we always like to say at Shaping Wealth that, we share with you a lot of words, but it's on you to find your own voice.
Yeah.
We give you the words, you find your voice.
Well, I also I'm going to take that in just a little different direction because you said something that I hadn't heard you say before, which is when you're going into these client meetings that you're going to be practicing, you're going to keep this topic, whatever technique you're going to use, in the back of your mind. And I think that's part of this applied component of what you're talking about. But I also think it has a lot to do with intention. When you go into a meeting, a client meeting, most advisors don't go to a client meeting with any real intention, right? They're going in to just go through the motions. And, Wayne Gretzky didn't get on the ice thinking he was going to lose. And so I love that. Just breaking that apart just a little bit. But the other thing that you said there, which I love, one of my favorite videos, I share this with friends, share it all the time, probably more than I should. There's this great video of this rabbi talking about growth and how uncomfortable growth is. And he says, it's like a lobster. In order for the lobster to grow to the next size, it has to get unbelievably uncomfortable in the current shell that it's in until it breaks and he has or she has the release of that growth. And it has to go through that all the time. And we think that growth is going to be easy. I mean, people are selling placebos left and right, cleansing products, and I'm your life coach that's going to change your life in 10 days, right? That sort of stuff. But we know as professionals, everybody who's listening to the show is a professional. They know they have to put in the time and work. And I really loved the system that you've built, not trying to sound like I'm selling your stuff, even though I think it's freaking amazing, that you have made these into bite-sized exercises with practice and feedback and the ability to talk to people on your team in order to implement. Now, let's go to the practice, because
Mhm.
one of the things that I've always said is some of the things that make you a really great advisor don't make you the greatest business person, right? And so, and that includes hiring, firing, training, accountability, motivation. How can you use some of the stuff that you guys have built at Shaping Wealth to work inward in the advisor's practice to make that experience for the team and everybody even better?
Yeah. Well, step one is just recognizing that great cultures have sort of an inside out point of view, meaning until everybody gets on the same page, it's really hard to serve your external clients properly. So we actually run full blown half day, full day workshops on what it means to build a human centric
Hmm.
wealth culture. And what does it mean to treat a colleague as a human first and a colleague second? What does it mean to treat a client as a human first and a client second? Well, it requires a fair amount of insight into what makes us human. We have a guide, we call it the guidebook for human advice, and it slices the human experience into 6 dimensions. I'm not going to walk through all of those pieces, but there's a certain workflow that we can all kind of slipstream into, where we appreciate the value of identity and beliefs and values, the importance of the information that we take in and that we project, the emotions that we feel, the decisions we make, the habits that we form or don't, and ultimately the forms of contentment or well-being that we experience. All of those are different dimensions of so-called human first advice or human first wealth culture. Each of those 6 dimensions are practice areas. And so when you think about, okay, I want to hire a young person into my practice, or someone's at the cusp of the next stage of their career, they've been here for 5 years and it's going great, or they've been here for 23 years and kind of what's the next challenge for them to keep them motivated. I don't know if it sounds obvious or easy or weird, but forcing yourself to think of someone as a human being before they are a colleague or a
Mhm.
coworker, and kind of leaning empathetically into the types of perspectives that are going to benefit them them the most. This framework allows you to kind of embrace the whole person and recognize that we're all trying to flourish in one way or another, and we're each on our own path, even though we have kind of a shared kind of a shared legacy in what makes us who we are. And so being able to recognize sort of the timelessness of the human condition and its connection to the timeliness of the roles that we're playing and how we need to get trained over time, making that connection is unbelievably powerful if you can do that.
Well, and your clients and prospects can feel it when they walk into your office. If you don't have a cohesive culture and you don't have happy team members, it's going to come through. And making sure that you're starting at home in the office, right, in order to build that sort of relationship that you want. We talk a lot about influence here and how important it is to be able to be more influential to your clients, prospects, and centers of influence. What you're talking about is the essence, in my opinion, of influence. It is
Mhm.
other focused, right? It is trying to do your best to make real, authentic connections. And again, that's not just in the marketplace, but that's also in your own workplace.
Yeah, that's right. I've never thought about the word influence in this context. I think of it oftentimes in terms of leadership
Mhm.
and servant leadership. I know we both know thousands of advisors, good people trying to do good work.
Yeah.
And the concept of servant leadership lands very, very well in the advisory community because you can make a great living helping people lead better lives, and that's a heck of a calling. One other, I mean, it's a separate data point, but I want to throw it into the mix, and you probably have better data on this than I do. I've just heard anecdotes, but I recently heard that when it comes to your client engagements and the touch points, that some really big number, I wish I remembered exactly what it was, but like 80 or 85% of your firm's engagement with an external client is not through the advisor herself, but through the team. So think
Yeah.
about the culture that you're building such that everyone from the C suite to the support staff is on the same page, knowing where the firm is going, and critically, it's sort of non-negotiable, having incentives built into the culture. Culture without incentives is platitudes. So having the right incentives in place to really pursue what it is collectively we think the culture is, because if 80% of your conversations or emails or other types of interactions with your clients is done not through that lead advisor, but through a CSA, a paraplanner, an assistant, someone from sales or marketing, whoever it might be, think about both the risk and opportunity in that fact pattern. And boy, what does it mean to invest in the broader culture so that no matter who is engaging with the client,
Mhm.
it's going to be a great experience?
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons why we believe, and you and I had a conversation about this too, that the content creation is so vitally important that your communication, your outward communication, whether that is email, whether that's social media posts, whether that's video, audio, or whatever, also has to be sprinkled with this flavor, this experience, this intention of what you guys teach at Shaping Wealth. If you have that behavioral finance undertone, that human centered, human first, human connection desire when you're creating content, people feel heard and they feel seen. Is that something that you've noticed, or am I way off base?
No, no, no. The big pivot, you're exactly on point. The big pivot that we've seen, but also we're trying to drive it, is getting away from behavioral finance as a distinct discipline where advisors say, "Oh, I'm really good at the portfolio stuff and I know what insurance policies to put my clients in. Oh, and now I
Mhm.
want to bring in behavioral finance." Our view is that that is old and incorrect, respectfully. Instead, we want to be asking a different, well, we want a different starting point, which is to think of behavior as gravity. We want to think, so you don't walk into a room and say, how's the gravity in here? Like physical gravity is everywhere and always, it surrounds us, and we just adapt to the forces at play. Behavior is social gravity. Behavior is everywhere and always. So the question isn't how do we fold behavior or behavioral finance into our practice? It's how do we accommodate the always on elements of human behavior at every stage of the planning process, from prospecting to discovery to onboarding to ongoing over years and decades. That's where the guidebook comes in. That's where we need to lean into the vocabulary and the mindsets and the skills that allow us to understand, well, this is actually a conversation about values and identity. This is a conversation about habits. This is a conversation about emotions. Those are three very different conversations requiring different knowledge bases and different skill sets in terms of what am I talking about? What is the mental model I have in mind that is going to drive this forward? Um, but until you appreciate the different elements of behavior, you might end up taking too narrow of a point of view and cut off opportunity, not only to help the client better, but to grow your business in terms of wallet share, in terms of referrals, in terms of other growth opportunities.
Yeah. Well, if you didn't hook everybody right there, then I think I'm missing my my outro. So listen, I'm sure that there are going to be more people who want to know more about shaping wealth and want to know more about how they can engage with what you offer. Where should they go? Who should go? And what do you want?
Yeah, so I'd point to two things. One is our website, shapingwealth.com. It's pretty straightforward in terms of, articulating that, we want to establish ourselves as the premier learning and development platform for all things human first guidance. And increasingly over time, we've become the outside learning partner for RIAs all over the world who want to have kind of ongoing training and acculturation in this sort of stuff. So shapingwealth.com, and there's an experiences page that kind of walks through immersive coaching programs, lighter touch introductions, workshops, speeches, all the kind of things that we do. The second thing I'd point out is that we have an always on content and insights and tools platform called Compass. Advisors, you are the guide, we are your compass. And we have 1,000+ original pieces of content, I think, organized beautifully on Compass, compass.shapingwealth.com. And you have a lot of content for free. There is a CE tier for a very low price. It's all you can eat continuing education credits. So we're really proud of that. And it's fun CE. It's interesting CE. It's not the CE that you put on mute and then just take the quiz at the end. You're going to actually want to engage this. And then we've got a pro tier to Compass Pro, where we're going to give you really good client-facing content that you can drag and drop into your client emails. We're going to give you advisor well-being resources. Advisor well-being is a major theme and initiative across everything that we do. And also kind of live access to the team, live coaching workshops, things like that. So shapingwealth.com for general introduction to who we are. And I'd love people to check out compass.shapingwealth.com for kind of a free content platform and just have fun with it.
And everybody, you need the content. And especially when you're having this client, human first centered experiential stuff that really make people think differently about their relationship with you as an advisor, that you're not just a product pusher, stock jockey, a person who's going to just do pie charts and bar graphs. That has changed. We talk about the change that you need to be doing in your content marketing all the time here at ProudMouth. And so does Brian at Shaping Wealth. This is the future. You need to do this. If not, you're going to have other people eating your lunch, because other people are going to be going, why isn't my advisor having these real meaningful conversations with me about the stuff that, one, we both can control and that really matter to me? I don't want to know about the gamma. I'm making things up now, of course, gamma of the S&P. I don't care. That's not what I need. I need to know how I can achieve what I want to achieve. And of course, so go to the Compass. We'll make sure that we have all of that stuff in the show notes. But please take advantage of that. And the CE thing is flipping amazing, everybody. Goodness gracious, you guys are all taking horrible CEs. They're just terrible. Have some fun, man. So have some fun. And last but not least, listen, if you need help creating content outside of what Brian and his team can do for you, please go ahead and reach out to me directly. You can direct message me on any social media profile, or you can email me at matt@proudmouth.com. We would love to be able to help you on your influence journey, because we know when you change the conversation, you change the way that people are going to interact with you. They're going to like, know, and trust you faster, and they're going to become fans, which we talk about as people who come in and they're pre-sold. So for Brian and everybody at Shaping Wealth, this is Matt Halloran. We'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.